Hello and welcome to another marvelous video. I'm your host Will. To me, my X-Men fans, in the world of Marvel's mutants, there are many who are powerhouses, and some of them are so strong they can command the elements. In today's video, we're going to look at a couple of mutants who are so strong they can command fire, ice, and the very weather itself. Let's get to it, shall we?
Marvel Comics has introduced thousands of mutants over the decades, but few powers are as visually spectacular or as devastating as the ability to command the very forces of nature. We're talking about mutants who can freeze entire battlefields, unleash terrifying earthquakes, summon world-spanning storms, or even manipulate raw energy itself. Today, we'll be looking at these characters based on their destructive power, versatility, control, and some of the biggest feats they have pulled off in the comics. Some have specialized in a single element, while others have powers that are pretty much capable of reshaping the entire world. From legendary X-Men who have defined the franchise for decades, to forgotten new mutants who deserve far more recognition, and even one of Arakko's newest Omega powerhouses, this list covers the absolute elite. And with that, let's get right to it. Storm. Well, obviously we had to start with Storm. Storm has been the face of elemental mutants for decades, and even after all these years, very few characters have managed to rival what she can do. She is also known as Ororo Munroe, one of the most powerful mutants in the Marvel Comics universe. She was born to an American photojournalist and a Kenyan princess who died in a plane accident. Ororo was forced to become a street thief in Cairo, Egypt. Eventually, she traveled back to Kenya, where her powers make her a local goddess because the tribes there believe she is divine. That is when Professor X finds her and convinces her to join the X-Men. Aside from being able to produce lightning, Storm can control the weather and atmosphere. This means she can create different types of weather such as hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, droughts, and more. In addition, she can control the wind, rain, snow, hail, air pressure, humidity, and temperature. Now, the Marvel Universe knows her as the woman that controls space weather and atmospheric conditions on other planets. There hasn't been another mutant close to being as powerful and versatile as her with regards to weather control and manipulation. And this is actually where I feel Storm's powers actually get crazy. Because she didn't just create storms, but could also control entire atmospheres. We already saw just how far that control could go in Planet-Size X-Men issue number 1 when Storm helped terraform Mars. Storm was responsible for creating and controlling the atmosphere and weather, and turned an uninhabitable situation into one that became capable of supporting life. But Storm's power wasn't just about how much force she can produce, it was also how quickly she could adapt. In Uncanny X-Men issue number 104, Storm attacked Magneto with a bolt of lightning, only for him to effortlessly redirect it right back at her. And when they faced each other again in Uncanny X-Men issue number 112, Storm changed her approach entirely, hitting him with a full blizzard instead of lightning, and it nearly worked. But her vow to never take a life made her hesitate at the last second, and Magneto turned that mistake against her. The extreme cold actually supercharged his magnetism instead of weakening him, and he struck back and put her down. Iceman. Now, if there's one mutant who spent years just hiding how powerful he really was, it has to be Bobby Drake. In fact, he was one of the 5 original X-Men. Bobby was the youngest of the team, and he was always joking, playing pranks, and behaving silly. Nevertheless, with time, people realized that this boy's heart is one of the warmest, and his mind is filled with powerful abilities. Bobby Drake was one of the X-Men heroes who were underestimated by others because he hid his tremendous powers with his misbehavior. Iceman has cryokinesis, or the power over cold, and he can create various objects using his powers. For instance, he could make simple blocks and complex structures using only ice. Moreover, he could craft several things out of cold, for example, shields, weapons, his favorite, slides, and even throw his enemies freezing them. Apart from that, the young mutant could decrease the temperature in hundreds of square miles. Interestingly, once it was revealed that he could even freeze people in ice to the bone. Another cool ability of Iceman is that he could rebuild his body out of water, giving him extraordinary regenerative capabilities. However, the cool ability that makes Iceman one of the most powerful Marvel heroes was revealed in Amazing X-Men Volume 2, Issue 2. When Nightcrawler was captured in Hell, Iceman went there to rescue him, only to find himself alongside Storm and Firestar surrounded by an entire army of demons. Storm took the worst of it early, overwhelmed and dragged off by a crew of demon pirates, leaving Iceman and Firestar alone to hold off the horde. Struggling against the heat the entire fight, Bobby finally let go of everything he had left and unleashed enough cold to freeze the infernal realm itself, collapsing the moment it was over from sheer exhaustion. What makes Bobby Drake so dangerous isn't just the scale of his powers, but the fact that people underestimated them for so long. Behind the jokes and ice slides is a mutant who was capable of freezing hell itself and rebuilding his own body, which made him one of the strongest elemental beings Marvel has ever created. Vulcan. Next up is a personal favorite, Vulcan. Because if raw energy had any sort of mutant form, it would most likely be Vulcan. He was also known as Gabriel Summers, and was the younger brother of Cyclops and Havoc. His parents were captured by the Shi'ar Empire before they could have him, and he was made to grow up on one of their spaceships. He eventually escaped Shi'ar control and discovered the truth about his family, and joined the X-Men too later on. But the dark path which led him to the X-Men was not to be discarded, and the rage that drove him to them in the first place drove him to even darker acts. Unlike his brothers, who have but one form of energy, Vulcan has all of them at his disposal, being able to manifest and project different kinds of energy from fire and heat to plasma, electricity, and radiation. He can absorb, redirect, and sense the energy, bestowing him with tremendous power and range, as he can perform incredible feats, from shooting beams of energy to flying in space, surviving in a vacuum, and overpowering opponents by draining them of their energy. The power gives him stamina, agility, and strength, allowing him to lift several tons. One of his most notable fights came in Uncanny X-Men issue number 480, when Vulcan tore through Shi'ar military craft and members of the Imperial Guard on his way back to the throne world, blasting through their ranks with wave after wave of raw energy. It ultimately took Gladiator himself, one of the most physically powerful warriors in the Shi'ar Empire, to finally catch up to him and put him down. In The Rise and Fall of the Shi'ar Empire, in Uncanny X-Men issues 475 to 486, he fights Gladiator, the Imperial Guard, and the Shi'ar military before taking over the Shi'ar Empire. After defeating his enemies and overthrowing the Shi'ar leadership, Vulcan claimed the throne and became the new Emperor of the Empire. Another destructive confrontation came in War of Kings issue 6, when Vulcan faced Black Bolt aboard an unstable superweapon neither of them wanted to set off. Vulcan noticed Black Bolt was deliberately holding back his devastating voice and mocked him for it, but the hesitation didn't last. Black Bolt finally cut loose with a point-blank blast that seared Vulcan down, and the resulting explosion tore open a literal hole in the fabric of space, a rift now known as the Fault, swallowing them both. What made Vulcan especially dangerous is that his powers aren't just limited to throwing energy blasts. He can absorb energy directed at him and redirect it back at his opponents, allowing him to turn an enemy's own attack against them. He has also demonstrated the ability to survive in the vacuum of space by creating protective energy fields. Magneto. Now this is probably the most misunderstood character on this list. Magneto. And if I'm being honest, if you actually know his story, it's not that hard to see why many fans absolutely love him despite everything that he's done. Being a Holocaust survivor, seeing the atrocities of mankind, and realizing that they would perpetrate it again, he vowed to never let such things happen again and to make sure that no other people would be used as a means to an end, and humanity would treat mutants as the same as they have been treating Jews. While Professor Xavier also wanted to protect the mutant race, these two had entirely different methods. Eric Lehnsherr is not only the villain and anti-hero, but also one of the X-Men. Aside from the impressive powers of magnetism, force fields, levitating objects that weigh tons, and creating giant electromagnets, his power pool is one of the broadest and most versatile in the Marvel Universe. Not only are his powers diverse, but they also have tremendous strength behind them. It could be said that very few superheroes have a wider range of abilities, and even fewer possess the power of magnetism in the same capacity as he does. Magneto himself says that he can push his control as deep as the subatomic level if he wishes. Speaking of ranges, his magnetic powers can be utilized from an unfathomable distance. According to issue number 1 of the planet-size X-Men, he managed to pull a significant iron asteroid from space down to the core of Mars, forming its magnetosphere. But it appears that this distance is by far not the farthest. During the Fatal Attraction storyline, Magneto was able to launch a CME, coronal mass ejection that caused a geomagnetic storm on Earth. The storm then generated an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, that caused all electronics on the planet to malfunction. Very few mutants possess this kind of range, precision, and raw destructive power all at once. Honestly, after seeing all these feats, it's pretty easy to understand why even the X-Men would think twice before standing against Magneto. Sobunar of the Depths. If you thought controlling water was impressive, wait until you hear about the mutant whose body literally contains an entire ocean. Meet Sobunar of the Depths, one of the rare Arakko mutants. Unlike the other characters on our list, his powers are internal. This Arakko warrior comes from a line of ocean-based mutants stretching back generations, and he sits on the Great Ring, the ruling council of Arakko. The powers contained within the body of this mutant are one of the rarest and most unimaginable powers in the Marvel Comics universe. Unlike his Arakko counterparts, which could manipulate water, Sobunar's blood itself contained an entire oceanic ecosystem. He didn't control water from outside. The water, and everything living in it, came from within him. The power of Sobunar over his environment manifested when the mutant, together with the X-Men, had to renovate Mars to make it suitable for the Arakko inhabitants. According to Planet Size X-Men issue number 1, in order to make Mars habitable, the X-Men team of Omega-level warriors had to renovate the core, the surface, and the atmosphere of the Red Planet. True to his powers, the mighty mutant let Mars draw the oceanic ecosystem straight from his blood, filling the planet's new seas with life. And, to be very honest, I feel the idea of carrying an entire ocean ecosystem inside your body is pretty insane, even by Marvel standards. Sunfire. The first impression I had of Sunfire was that he seemed like any other fire-based mutant. But once I actually realized how his powers worked, he was actually very different. Compared to other fire mutants, Sunfire stands out because he generates his own solar energy instead of simply just controlling existing flames, which actually made him one of Marvel's strongest fire-based mutants. The Japanese national has become a national hero after disclosing his mutant status, but has faced multiple conflicts with the X-Men due to his arrogant nature, even though he has saved them on multiple occasions. Shiro's powers are made up of his ability to absorb solar energy and use it to produce great fires and energy. His powers are superior to other fire mutants because the energy can create greater damage by generating enough heat to create weaknesses in his opponents. With his ability to absorb solar radiation, Sunfire is among the most dangerous heat-producing mutants in the X-Men universe. In Marvel Comics Presents issue number 32, when Sunfire was confronted with a device whose heat ray was powerful enough to threaten Earth's core, rather than simply trying to destroy the machine from outside, Sunfire decided to directly flow into the device, where he used his mutant abilities to collect solar energy and channel it into the machine itself. He then created a counterpulse that made the device overload and then explode, stopping the heat ray before it could manage to reach the Earth's core. The resulting explosion left Sunfire buried under the rubble, but he managed to survive, which shows just how much energy he could absorb and manipulate when pushed to his limits. Magma. Most mutants control the elements from a distance, but Magma does something that is far more extreme. She becomes the element herself. Born in Nova Roma, one of the earliest hidden civilizations who preserved the customs of ancient Rome, Amara discovered her mutant powers and left her people. Joining the New Mutants, she learned to control her mutant abilities and was put under the tutelage of Professor Xavier. Magma possesses complete control over lava and geothermal energy. She could melt solid ground into molten rock, trigger volcanic eruptions, create massive lava flows, and also reshape the landscape around her. These abilities allowed her to change the battlefield itself instead of simply fighting her enemies. Even with control of her powers, Amara struggled to keep her emotions stable. Still, she gained the ability to transform her body into living magma, making her even more durable while attacking and increasing the temperature and destructive potential of her attacks. Instead of simply attacking with liquid slow-moving magma, Magma can completely change the battlefield. One of her greatest displays of power came in the New Mutants Volume 1, Issue 12. After suffering from sunstroke and becoming overwhelmed emotionally, she lost control of her mutant abilities and transformed into her living magma form. The loss of control triggered a massive volcanic eruption that drastically reshaped the landscape off the coast of Rio de Janeiro, which ended up creating a brand new island complete with active volcanic zones. So, Magma may not have the range of Storm or the versatility of Magneto, But that volcanic eruption is exactly why Magma deserves a spot on the list, because when Amara loses control, the ground beneath everyone could become a disaster of its own. Dust. Honestly, I feel Dust is one of the most underrated mutants on this list. She may not have the fame of Storm or Magneto, but her powers are extremely terrifying when used properly. Soraya Kadir, also known as Dust, is one of the most unique elemental mutants in the house, hailing from Afghanistan. Soraya was kidnapped from her homeland and later rescued by the X-Men from human traffickers and brought here to the Xavier School for gifted young people. Despite having to undergo numerous traumatic events on her own since she was quite little, Soraya remained pious and faithful to her Muslim religion. This young girl is one of the shyest and most modest of all the X-Men, although she has one of the most powerful abilities among her fellow mutants. Dust has the unique ability to transform her body into a sandstorm, giving her numerous ways of attacking her enemies. First of all, by transforming her body into a living sandstorm, she can surround her enemies and move through even the smallest openings. Secondly, she can create a massive sandstorm capable of surrounding almost any number of foes. Moreover, the sandstorm created by her can suffocate enemies, strip them, disarm them, and cut. Therefore, the capabilities of this girl are truly tremendous, as well as useful for both attacking and defending. But we saw just how lethal this ability could be in New X-Men issue number 133, when the X-Men first encountered Soraya in Afghanistan. After one of the slave traders tried to remove her burqa, Soraya immediately transformed into her sand form and attacked him, using the swirling particles of her body to literally flay the flesh from his bones. The X-Men eventually found her unconscious at the scene. It indeed was a horrifying first demonstration of her powers, because Soraya wasn't just moving sand at her attackers, her entire body was the weapon. Firestar. Firestar might just be one of the most misleading names in Marvel. Despite what everyone assumes, her powers actually have very little to do with ordinary fire. Although she appears to control fire, Angelica Jones actually generates and manipulates microwave radiation. Another interesting fact about Firestar is that she was initially introduced as an animated character in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and officially incorporated into the Marvel comic book universe. She was recruited by the New Warriors, then joined the Avengers, and subsequently became an ally of the X-Men. Firestar's powers become much more remarkable when we see what her microwave radiation can actually do in combat. In Amazing X-Men issue number 16, Firestar faces Crossbones and used her microwave powers to superheat the weapons he was carrying. The intense heat caused his knife and gun to be non-accessible, forcing him to drop them before Firestar moved in to finish the fight. Rather than simply surrounding an opponent with flames, Firestar was able to precisely focus her microwave energy on specific objects and heat them from within, and that demonstrates just how versatile and dangerous her powers can be. Avalanche. Avalanche is probably the least flashy mutant on the list, but that doesn't really make him any less terrifying. In fact, his powers prove that sometimes the simplest abilities can end up causing the most destruction. Also known as Dominikos Petrakis, Avalanche is able to create powerful seismic vibrations capable of causing earthquake-like destruction. Dominikos is one of the most prominent members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and has had a large number of fights with the X-Men. This strange mutant is not considered to be an Omega-level mutant. However, his power is very violent, and he is one of the most dangerous Earth mutants in the Marvel Universe. Avalanche's seismic powers allow him to produce powerful vibrations and emit them into various surfaces and objects, causing their fragmentation. The mutant does not have control of the Earth, but he is able to create strong enough disturbances that will crush the ground and break buildings. It should also be noted that the powers of his seismic disturbances can reach such levels that they can crush whole cities and townships. This type of explosion would be strong enough to smash the enemy squad of mutants, leaving the ground itself as an obstacle. One of his most telling moments actually happened outside the X-Men entirely. In Incredible Hulk issue number 263, Avalanche tried to shake down California, threatening to trigger the San Andreas Fault from LAX. The Hulk showed up to stop him, and Avalanche made the mistake of aiming his seismic power directly at him. Since his powers barely affect living tissue, the vibrations bounced right back and shattered the bones in his own hands and arms, proof that even one of the X-Men's most destructive Earthshakers has a very real limit to what his powers can do. And that brings us to the end of our list with the strongest elemental mutants in Marvel Comics. What's really interesting is how diverse all these characters are. As described in the passage, elemental powers in the Marvel Universe can range from simple fire making and throwing to complete control of an entire planet's atmosphere. Some mutants, such as Storm, can create and control natural disasters, while some can transform their own bodies to near-ultimate conditions, like Iceman. Some can produce entire ecosystems within their bodies, and some can output massive amounts of energy and solar beams like Vulcan and Sunfire. As far as diversity goes to this day, Storm and Iceman probably still take the cake in terms of the most versatile and powerful elemental mutants in the Marvel Universe. But mutants recently discovered on other planets, such as those from Arakko, have provided an interesting insight on what other types of elemental mutations are possible outside of Earth. From being able to produce solar fire and energy on a universal scale, to being able to produce earthquakes, control oceans, and the skies themselves, elemental mutants are some of the most versatile superhumans the Marvel Universe has to offer. But now, it's your turn. Which character did you like the most? And which elemental mutant did we leave off the list? Let us know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Excelsior!